managed to have a radio. And I think from memory there was only one station that you could get in this area. Most farmers had what we called a cow yard radio. They had a radio in their cow yard, and it used to calm the cows. I know that sounds silly, but it did. That wouldn't have been a cow yard radio, that one there, no way. But these would have been. These sort and those there, yeah. The console radio made a good cow yard radio because it's got a big speaker in it, and you can turn it up loud. My father was in the radio and electrical business. He come to Mathra in the 1930s on the railways. And then my father was already making radios himself in the backyard, basically, and selling them to the local farmers for extra income. And then he'd make a better one, take it down, trade the old one in, sell that to someone else because they couldn't afford them. This one here in particular, my father made. He bought the box, but he made the radio for inside it. He bent the chassis out of aluminium, drilled holes and that in it for the valves, mounted it all in there, and that's its speaker. They were pretty crude back then, but Dad was very clever. In 1937, he decided to leave the railways and go into business. And he started the business, which was eventually called KV Scott and Sons, because his name was Keith Victor. And that's how it sort of more or less started. And then it gradually boomed, of course, because you got the news on the radio, and that kept you up to date. And there was sort of serials as well, and they continue on each Friday night. You'd sit down and listen to a serial. And some of the big names that we sold were AWA Radiola. See, they're all beautiful old wooden cases, beautifully made. They're what they call Bakelite, these. And then after that, they went to plastic, which is these ones up here. They're his Marsden Voices and Astons up there. They're plastic. So they went from wooden to Bakelite to plastic. Radio is actually what they call an amplifier. So all a radio does is pick up the signal, which is very, very weak, and amplify it. And in later years, they brought out a radiogram, which had a record player in it. And then later on again, they brought out a 3-in-1 with a radio, a radiogram, and a television in it. See, television started in Australia in 1956 for the Olympic Games, but Dad had them here in Mathra in 1954. He got into television in the early days too, and he was very clever at that. And he went to Melbourne to learn how to fix them. And he worked at the Admiral factory. Admiral is American. Admiral. And they were sent out to Australia, but of course America was 110 volts, we're 240 volts. So Dad went to the factory and got a job, modifying these old American TVs to suit Australian conditions. This is one of the first transistor radios to come to Australia. It's an American one, it's called an Admiral. And my father brought one of these back from America when he went over there. And then eventually they come out to Australia. My brother and a couple of mates and that went to the Mathra show, and we were walking around the showgrounds with these portable radios. Amazing. People were amazed. And this little tiny radio, it was playing music and that, and they couldn't believe it because before that, they were big, bulky, heavy, horrible things, because before that they had valves, used a lot of power, and you had to have a big, heavy batteries in the radios if it was portable, and they didn't last long anyway. Then they come out with the FM, which was much better quality, and size, of course. You could have a radio in your watch. You could actually have a radio built into that. And it was called a wrist radio, you see, and you could carry it around like that. Back in those days, if you asked my father, would they ever invent a little a radio like that? He'd say, oh, no, that's science fiction. My father would never have believed you could hold a little phone in your hand, talk to someone and you could see them. That'd be absolute science fiction. Technology is mind-boggling.